This is the Brave New Coin Crypto Conversation, hosted by Andy Pickering.
Hi everyone, Andy Pickering here. I'm your host and welcome to the Crypto Conversation, a Brave New Coin podcast where we talk to the people building the future in the Bitcoin, blockchain and cryptocurrency space. My guest today is John Light. John works in product management at Sovryn. Sovryn is a decentralized Bitcoin trading and lending platform. It's kind of a DeFi on Bitcoin is kind of the easy way to understand this. So I'm quite looking forward to digging into this with you today, John. Hey, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
So just before we begin to talk DeFi on Bitcoin and learn about Sovryn, John, I think it would be useful if you could please introduce yourself. Love to hear a little bit about your background.
Yeah, sure. So I have been in the Bitcoin community for some time now. I started my professional journey in the Bitcoin industry, if you will, just doing consulting for investors and startups that were interested in joining the Bitcoin revolution. And over time, worked on some of my own startups as well as early employee or contractor for other people's startups, and have worked on various kinds of projects like exchanges and borrowing and lending, and even things like DAOs. So have worked in kind of a bunch of different aspects of Bitcoin and related technologies, and in mostly either like marketing or business development or kind of product related roles.
Yeah, I was just reading your bio, and on your website, I think your bio says you enjoy spending time thinking about how to improve the human condition, and you're excited about using innovative governance, entrepreneurship, and technology as a means to that end. And I know you spent some time working on community governance for Aragon. But it seems that you kind of alluded it to itself. It sounds like you're a Bitcoiner in the Bitcoin sense of the term, if that makes sense.
Yeah, very much so. But yeah, one of my interests, aside from Bitcoin, is governance. Thinking about polycentric governance in particular. It's interesting how my kind of professional journey, starting with Bitcoin, kind of led me to work on governance related projects as well.
And just before we talk more Sovryn, yeah, I'd love to just get some more high level thoughts on what you mean by governance. I mean, most people will know what you do mean, but I mean, what are the sort of what is the human governance problem, and at a high level, how can, I suppose, blockchains and Bitcoin help contribute to solving that?
Sure. So I think governance is the concept of governance is primarily about decision making, particularly decision making among groups of people. So anytime you have a group of people and they need to make a decision together, the process by which the decisions are made, and the process by which the process itself is changed, can be thought of as governance. And how that how it's actually implemented in the world would be through various formal and informal rules and institutions. Like, I think when most people hear the word governance, they might think of governments. So the kind of democratic or less democratic governments are all have a governance process that is used to kind of change the rules, and change the process by which the rules are changed. But then it could even be, you know, something informal, like you know, how a kind of volunteer group kind of makes decisions together about what kind of projects to work on, or how to make changes to their organization. So that's kind of a high level overview of like what governance is, and then how it relates to maybe like blockchain technology is really interesting. So I think that there are aspects of governance that can be automated, or perhaps made more secure or transparent by implementing those aspects of governance on a blockchain. For example, voting can be done on the blockchain. I think that there is still a lot of work to do to make voting on the blockchain as secure as even something like traditional paper ballot voting. But there's good research being done there to try to solve some of those problems, like around collusion and bribery. But then if you can overcome the voting problems, then you can actually like automate some of the implementation of the decision-making process. So if you make a particular decision, that the output of that decision could be enforced automatically on the blockchain. For example, if you have an organization and that organization has a treasury, traditionally that treasury would be controlled by maybe one or two people. Legally, it might be controlled by more people, but when it comes to who can actually like click the button on the online banking portal, or you know, turn the key to open the safe that actually holds the organization's money, just due to the like limitations of, you know, that the technology that is traditionally used for managing money, usually it's only like one or maybe at most two people that actually control the money. And so with smart contracts on a blockchain, we could actually have a kind of arbitrarily large number of people who share control over an organization's treasury. So if you have like a 100-member organization, you could implement a kind of direct democracy that says, you know, more than half of those 100 members have to vote to approve a funds transfer. And so at that point, you have, you know, effectively 51 out of 100 people who actually have to approve the transaction to send money out of the organization's treasury. And so that's just one example, but it can be made, you know, much more flexible. The rules can be encoded in a number of different ways, depending on the type of organization and the type of decisions that they have to make.
Yes, that's exactly right, John. And I suppose, you know, if it's smart contracts that help make this possible, perhaps that's a slightly awkward segue into DeFi, because of course, you know, we've seen one of the narratives that Bitcoin, right, is obviously Bitcoin was the first blockchain, the first cryptocurrency, and Bitcoin has a reputation, rightly or wrongly, as being, you know, quite difficult to work with, very slow to move, sort of become digital gold more than necessary, you know, a peer-to-peer payment network just at the moment, although of course it can do that as well. Meanwhile, Ethereum and newer chains such as like the Binance Smart Chain and Solana, just to name a couple, are building out these quite strong and fast-growing ecosystems of smart contract developers who are building, DeFi, all sorts of interesting DeFi applications. And, we've seen a lot of this over the last 2 years. But yeah, so when people think of DeFi, they don't think of Bitcoin, but that is just starting to change. So Sovryn is one of the platforms helping to make this possible. So I'm not sure where you want to begin here, John, but is that sort of a good starting point? What's your take as we enter into Sovryn?
Yeah, that's an interesting introduction. I do think that people might not normally think of Bitcoin and DeFi or advanced kind of smart contracts as things that go together. But with the innovation that is happening at Bitcoin layer 2 and in Bitcoin sidechains, it is starting to be increasingly possible for application developers, protocol developers to build the kinds of protocols that we have historically been seeing implemented on other cryptocurrency blockchains and ecosystems. We're starting to bring that functionality back to Bitcoin, so people can do the kinds of things that they would normally expect to be able to do on these other chains in a Bitcoin native or kind of Bitcoin within the Bitcoin ecosystem. And Sovryn is just one example of that, where we've been able to bring smart contracts that originally were deployed to Ethereum to a Bitcoin sidechain called RSK or Rootstock, and then kind of modify them to suit our needs and build a DeFi platform for borrowing, lending, trading, and other kinds of financial activities.
Yeah, that's a very nice summary, John. Well, tell us, introduce Sovryn, then. I'd love to hear just a little bit more about, I suppose, the origin story. Sovryn is reasonably new, still a little bit under the radar, but people are beginning to take notice, obviously, particularly in the Bitcoin community. So, yeah, where did Sovryn spin up from, and how long have you been involved?
I've been involved with Sovryn since February is when I first started contributing, and I first joined just to work on governance at Sovryn. I had left the Aragon project in January and took about a month off to think about what I wanted to do next. And one of the contributors to Sovryn, Eden Yago, had reached out to me and was just interested in working together in some way and helping out with getting their Sovryn's governance system up and running. Seemed like the most helpful thing that I could do for them at the time, since I had just been working on a project related to governance at Aragon. And so that was February. Sovryn, technically, the kind of full public launch, like when all of the restrictions on the platform were removed, was I believe it was in either March or April. But the project had been in a kind of private beta form since late 2020. So it had already been live, but in a more restricted format for probably about at least 6 months by then. But the project kind of got its start with just some developers and community members that saw a need to have Bitcoin native financial services and this like DeFi functionality, because up until products like Sovryn, the only way to trade your Bitcoin or get liquidity on your Bitcoin is either using a centralized service, like a centralized exchange or a centralized borrowing and lending platform, or you have to take your Bitcoin to and like an altcoin blockchain. And so what Sovryn and the founders of Sovryn wanted to do is to enable people to get that functionality without having to use a centralized exchange and without having to use altcoins. So they decided to build this platform on RSK, which is a Bitcoin sidechain, and do it in a more Bitcoin native way.
Yeah, so essentially what you mean is, another way of explaining that is, at the moment, if you're a Bitcoiner, let's say you're just maybe Bitcoin only, and you want to either get some yield on your Bitcoin or perhaps use it as collateral to get a loan or something like that. You do have options now. You didn't always have options, but there are options such as Celsius and BlockFi and those kind of, I guess, centralized services. Or if you're a little bit more adventurous, as you say, you can, I guess, wrap your Bitcoin on various other DeFi chains. But yeah, so Sovryn essentially is a new decentralized service specifically for Bitcoin that will enable, I suppose, the full range of, well, maybe not to begin with, but yeah, lending and borrowing and yield farming, all those kind of products, John?
Yeah, exactly. And even today, you can actually do all of those things on Sovryn.
Right.
So the core product offering right now is trading. So being able to trade Bitcoin for stable coins or other tokens that have been issued on RSK and listed on the Sovryn decentralized exchange. You can do borrowing and lending. So using your Bitcoin as collateral to get a loan denominated in stable coins or some other token, or even lending your Bitcoin out and receiving, interest on those loans. And kind of combining those products together, the DEX and the borrowing and lending platform, you can also do margin trading. So basically using Bitcoin as collateral to do leverage trading up to 5x with up to 5x leverage.
Nice. And I suppose that would just, you kind of answered that, but then just what would be I suppose the core use cases that Sovryn is offering at the beginning?
Yeah, that pretty much sums it up. So yeah, if you want liquidity on your Bitcoin, you don't want to sell, then you can use it as collateral and get a loan. And you can use that loan to do whatever you want, whether it's, pay down existing, fiat debts that you have, or buy something, maybe a car, or, home improvements, or tuition for school, kind of whatever you need the extra cash for, and that you don't want to have to kind of sell your Bitcoin to finance.
Yeah.
And then kind of the other use case of that is levered trading, basically. So you want to kind of use the Bitcoin that you have to like amplify your potential gains based on speculation on the future price of Bitcoin.
Sure. And so Rootstock then, or RSK, so it's a Bitcoin layer 2 sidechain that enables smart contract functionality. Right. And what's interesting, you can probably explain this much better than I can. But so RSK is essentially a merge mined with Bitcoin, right? And so obviously Bitcoin being by far the world's largest, most decentralized blockchain, well, that helps, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Exactly. RSK is a Bitcoin sidechain, and it has kind of two main connections back to Bitcoin. The first is what you just mentioned, the merge mine aspect. So that means that Bitcoin miners or some subset of them are also running RSK an RSK node, and using the same proof of work that they're putting towards Bitcoin, also towards mining RSK blocks. So RSK is able to benefit from some of the hash power security of Bitcoin. And then the other way that RSK connects back to Bitcoin is that the RSK blockchain has what's called a two-way peg. So this is basically a feature that enables people to kind of lock up their Bitcoin on the Bitcoin main chain and then receive a roughly equivalent amount of tokens on the RSK blockchain that are pegged to Bitcoin, like 1-to-1. And that token is called RBTC. And so once people like peg in their Bitcoin, they'll receive this RBTC token, and then they can do kind of whatever they want within the RSK blockchain with that RBTC, and then eventually bring it back to the Bitcoin main chain, exchange it on a 1-to-1 basis back for real Bitcoin on the Bitcoin main chain. And that RBTC token is the native token of the RSK blockchain. So the same way that you would use Ether to pay for gas or mining fees on the Ethereum blockchain, on RSK you use RBTC to pay for the gas or mining fees on the RSK blockchain.
And what is there do you know, just, I don't know, a rough percentage, or, what percentage of the Bitcoin mining network are merge mining Rootstock or are interested in it?
It fluctuates. So like before the mining ban in China earlier this year, I think it got as high as 70%. And because a lot of the miners or pools that were mining, merge mining RSK were based in China, after the China mining ban, that number dropped. I think now it's like 55% of Bitcoin's hash rate is also mining RSK.
Still seems still quite a lot. That's quite high, right?
It's more than a majority, so that's I think a comfortable position. But of course, the more the better.
Yeah, of course. Well,
Yeah.
And so I'm just fascinated if we, perhaps zoom out slightly. Then, John, I'm just trying to think how I phrase this. Is Bitcoin, or is DeFi on Bitcoin, and let's say Sovryn is one example of this, but Square, what's his name, Jack Dorsey, and at Twitter, and of course Square and Square Crypto. So Jack Dorsey has talked about how Square are committed to building some kind of DeFi platform that is essentially dedicated to Bitcoin, which is essentially what Sovryn is doing as well. Is the idea here to kind of compete with Ethereum or, Binance Smart Chain, other DeFi ecosystems, or eventually everything will just become so interoperable that it kind of won't matter? Or is it just too soon to even know how this begins to play out? What do you think?
Yeah, that's a good question. it's hard to say whether you would frame it as competition. I mean, in some regards, yeah. I mean, some people are going to have, would have to make a choice between, whether, I go and do my DeFi stuff on a Bitcoin based platform like Sovryn, or another protocol built on RSK, or other DeFi protocols that could be built on Bitcoin. Or do I go do that activity in an altcoin ecosystem? And my position on this is that I think Bitcoin is the best money that's ever been invented. It's a very special thing that exists. I think just the way it was created by Satoshi. He just got so much right in how he implemented it. It's actually kind of remarkable, very remarkable, I would say, how just how much Satoshi got right in his implementation of Bitcoin. And so starting from that premise of looking at Bitcoin as kind of the ideal money, I would like to be able to see Bitcoin used as the kind of native money of the internet, and see the a financial system built on top of Bitcoin. And so for me, it's just kind of an extension of it being Sovryn and the work we're doing on building out decentralized finance for Bitcoin is kind of just an extension of that belief in Bitcoin as the ideal money system. So I see Bitcoin being that native money of the internet, that native money of the economies of the future, the internet enabled economies of the future. And so building financial protocols and really anything that can be done with crypto economic protocols and blockchains and smart contracts, I think all of that can be done using Bitcoin as kind of the base layer of that system.
Yeah, very nicely said, John. I tend to agree. Hard to argue with that. Well, what happens next then? I guess. Well, how is Sovryn tracking at the moment in terms of, I don't know, whatever metrics you're watching, and number of users and volume traded and all that kind of stuff? Anything that you can share in terms of user growth, really? Oh, because
sure, yeah,
sorry to interrupt, and it just reminds me, I did, just in my reading yesterday, I was reminded, I think it was Pomp, right? Pomp made some fairly, well, it's Pomp, so you expect a bit of a bombastic claim, but he made some bombastic claims, and it was about Sovryn, right? A few months ago.
Yeah, possibly. I think Pomp's a great guy. I don't follow everything that he's said, but he has pointed out that Sovryn has been growing and increasing in users and liquidity on the platform. If I look at some of our metrics that we currently have, looks like we have, let's see.
And just while you're doing that, speaking of Pomp, and I'm not criticizing Pomp in any way. I like Pomp as well. And when I say bombastic, that's just part of his job. If you're going to be a high profile Twitter personality, influencer, whatever, you've got to talk your book, if you like, and Pomp is very good at that. But I did see, I'm just looking for the tweet now. I think Pomp had Plan B on YouTube. earlier today, and I'm just looking at the tweet.
I saw
Pomp,
his YouTube was deleted.
yeah, so I wonder. I'm sure. I imagine it's just a glitch, and everything will come right. But it's just something to keep an eye on. Yeah, people tend to jump to conspiracy a little bit too quickly sometimes, but
Yeah.
you never know.
Um, you never know. I mean, I've seen incidents where people, wake up and their YouTube channel is deleted, and it's a glitch. It's a very alarming glitch. But eventually they sort it out with YouTube, and sometimes it's legit. People in this day and age, it's hard to know it's hard to tell the difference at first, because YouTube has been silencing so many voices who are just sharing an alternative viewpoint.
Well, that's right. Deplatforming, people do get deplatformed all the time. It's censorship is a thing, but I don't know if Pomp and Plan B would be deplatformed just for saying something outrageously bullish about Bitcoin. But you never know.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what they were talking about, But if they were just sticking to Bitcoin, yeah, I imagine they wouldn't have said anything that would anger the censors at YouTube too much. But yeah, I mean, Pomp is, I love his energy. He's a very, enthusiastic and great advocate for Bitcoin. And I hope he figures out his YouTube problems, and perhaps he can start, if he's not already, perhaps he can start, uploading some of his videos to like maybe a decentralized kind of YouTube alternative. There's one that's run by or like an instance of the PeerTube protocol that is run by Matt Odell and Wiz and a few other Bitcoiners, called Bitcoin.tv or BitcoinTV.com, and so it would be cool to start seeing Pomp and other prominent Bitcoin media people uploading their videos there.
No
Perhaps
doubt.
Brave New Coin can start uploading some videos there.
Hey, we really should.
Um,
We don't want to get demonetized either by the big bad YouTube.
yeah, it's always good to have a backup, at the very least. But yeah, so on the topic of Sovryn user growth, so I'm looking at some of the charts that we have, and it looks like just or last week rather, there was an average of 4,000 wallets using the platform, or 4,000 addresses interacting with the platform. So that's in contrast to earlier this year in May, when it was about 1,800 wallets. So a little more than double the active wallets, kind of daily active wallets.
Heading in the right direction, John.
Yeah, it's a good trend. I think the actual growth in liquidity is significantly more than that. I think the liquidity has actually grown. I remember back when it was just like I think it was like 10 million TVL, and now it's let's see where we're at for the AMM pool. It's 94 million. So
Well, do you
quite a lot more.
It is, but it shows how early DeFi is on Bitcoin is really what it shows. But what we're seeing in crypto is, well, it's the story of technology. Exponential growth is kind of how technology networks grow, and so things can grow very quickly. Do you expect to see then? I mean, once a DeFi ecosystem gets hits a tipping point or just gets traction, we've seen this in Ethereum and on Binance Smart Chain, you see all these different applications, dexes, lending and borrowing platforms, yield farms, AMMs do you expect all of this, people to spin up all these new applications to try and do the same on Bitcoin?
Yeah, I mean, I think that if there's an application that gets traction somewhere else first, and it looks like something that would be attractive to Bitcoiners or to people who might prefer to use a Bitcoin native platform, I think that would be a good place to start. And then you might start seeing some of this stuff just getting built on a Bitcoin native platform for the advantages of security and kind of the bigger network effect of Bitcoin. To me, like, building on Bitcoin is a pragmatic decision as much as it is kind of just a decision based around my belief in Bitcoin as money, because Bitcoin does have the biggest network effects and the most security of any blockchain that's out there. Personally, if I was starting a new project today, I would start from building on Bitcoin. But yeah, if a project happens to get started somewhere else first, and it looks like it's getting traction, then that could be an indication that it would be a good project to bring over to Bitcoin too.
Yeah, the idea there being essentially everything would soon is or will soon be EVM compatible, right?
Yeah, so RSK itself is EVM compatible, so anything that gets built on another EVM chain could get brought over to Bitcoin. And we're already seeing a lot of protocols, especially the newer ones. They start almost multi-chain from the beginning. So they might deploy to Ethereum, but then they'll also have a BSC or a Polygon kind of implementation, or on some other EVM chain. I think it's only a matter of time until we start seeing Bitcoin native EVM compatible platforms like RSK becoming one of those kind of default, like, if you're a multi-chain app, it's just, it's table stakes. Like, you got to have a Bitcoin native option too.
For sure. All right. Well, it's exciting. This is happening maybe faster than people expected it would on Bitcoin. Let's just finish off this part of the podcast with a bit of a good old-fashioned fun speculation. John, just be interested to hear your thoughts on the market at the moment. Any, feel free to speculate. It is just speculation, but as we record now, Bitcoin is about 57,600. We mentioned Plan B. Are you bullish on Q4? What are you looking for?
I'm glad that you told me the price, because I don't watch the price very often. So even though I work on a DeFi platform, the numbers that I look are more like usage numbers and TVL and things like that, and not so much the prices of the assets that are trading. So my personal kind of time horizon for these things is measured in years or decades. So I don't really watch the price on a day-to-day basis or think about, what the price is looking like, on a quarter by quarter basis. My kind of opinion on this is that it's always a good time to buy Bitcoin.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Not financial advice, that's life advice.
Exactly. Just hey, slow and steady, dollar cost average, week by week, month by month, year by year, stack by stack, long-term time horizon. No problem. Yep, happy with that, John.
Yeah, and I mean, if I had to, kind of zoom out a little bit, and think about where we are right now, it's if I could guess what the price was like by the end of this year, then I'd be able to make some pretty good trades based off of that information. But just just looking at what's been going on from a macro perspective, that is, outside, like the macro conditions outside of the Bitcoin, as well as what's going on specifically within Bitcoin. Things are looking pretty good. Not really too many tailwinds or headwinds rather. And we've got a lot of tailwinds. So, personally, I'm bullish, but then again, I'm always bullish on Bitcoin. So take that for what you will.
That's right. All right. Well, that feels like a nice place to go to a very quick break, John, and then we'll come back. We'll have some fun. We'll finish off with the very famous crypto conversation hot take round.
For crypto indices and benchmarking, Brave New Coin's powerful indexing engine can calculate high-frequency intraday and end-of-day indices for a wide range of index products. Brave New Coin's custom indices team delivers experienced consultancy, premium data, and trusted calculation. Contact BNC today to find out more.
All right, we're back and I'm with John Light. John is a product guy at Sovryn, building DeFi on Bitcoin. And John, I like to finish each podcast with a quick round of rapid fire crypto conversation hot takes. Just a bit of fun. Are you up for it?
Let's do it.
All right, just want hot take style, quick snappy answers, John. But I'm pretty sure we can guess the answer to the first question, which is, where do you sit on the Bitcoin maximalist to multi-coin opportunist spectrum?
That's a really good question. I don't know if I have a quick snappy take for that. But personally, I think that Bitcoin is the best money that's ever been invented, and I don't think that we need. I don't think we need any more monies, because I think that any improvements that you could potentially think to make to Bitcoin, you can implement on Bitcoin directly, rather than kind of having to create a new coin to do that. That doesn't mean that I think Bitcoin is the only digital asset that makes sense. I think there are lots of other digital assets that could be valuable. But from a kind of monetary perspective, I think all we need is Bitcoin.
I like it, John. Well, what would you say then is your firmest conviction, crypto opinion?
Firmest conviction, probably what I just said. I think Bitcoin is very special, and that it is the best money that's ever been invented. Another, I guess, firm crypto conviction you could say that I might have is that privacy and fungibility are incredibly important. So I'm a big supporter of projects that are improving the privacy and fungibility of Bitcoin and making it easier for people to buy, sell, trade, borrow, lend, do everything that they want to do with their Bitcoin in a more privacy preserving way. So they don't have to share their personal information with third parties who they have to trust to secure that information and prevent it from leaking or getting hacked or shared with any unwanted third parties.
Makes sense, John. I like it a lot. Well, Bill Gates famously said that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in 2 years and underestimate what we can accomplish in 10. So anything you like here, but Bitcoin, Sovryn, DeFi on Bitcoin, what does it look like in 10 years' time?
It's a really good question. I think that the real answer is probably going to surprise all of us. Like Bill Gates says, I think we probably underestimate what can be accomplished in 10 years. If we take Bitcoin as an example here, 10 years ago, I don't think anybody would have expected that Bitcoin would be adopted as legal tender and by a country, within that 10 years. And so with that threshold having been crossed already within, the last 10 years, basically looking back to like 2011, thinking about where we are in 2031, I think the curve is going to be exponential, or continue to be exponential, and the human mind does not do well with exponential curves. So we could be potentially looking at a world where like more than half of the countries in the world have declared Bitcoin legal tender. You could be looking at a world where people in every country can at the very least pay for all of their daily expenses in Bitcoin directly. So like without having to like buy a gift card or use a Bitcoin debit card or any of the other workarounds that people have come up with, but actually spend Bitcoin directly to pay for their daily expenses, potentially even including paying their taxes. So even if their government doesn't accept Bitcoin as legal tender, they might integrate BTC Pay server or something like that and accept Bitcoin payments for taxes.
Sounds bullish.
Yeah, I think that would be a pretty cool future. And from that, I would expect that people would be able to do also like all of the kinds of things that they would normally use a centralized bank or brokerage for various financial transactions and managing their savings and investment funds. I expect that they'll be able to do that in a kind of blockchain native way, using Bitcoin as money and various kinds of tokenized crypto assets and security tokens to manage their money and their finances.
Very nice, John. And I suppose the reverse of that is that William Gibson famously said that the future is already here, it's just not evenly distributed. Can you think of an example of the future being here right now, but most people just aren't really aware of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I actually brought up that exact quote when I was telling somebody, a friend who was visiting with me, when I was telling them about Sovryn. I was explaining how like I've used the platform to get a loan using Bitcoin as collateral, and then I received stable coins, and then I use those stable coins to buy a car. And like I didn't have to go through a bank. I didn't have to fill out any paperwork, ask anyone for permission. I just connected my wallet, clicked a few buttons, and had the money to buy a new car. That is, to me, I think, the future of finance. Yeah, it's here. It's just not evenly distributed. Not everybody has access to these tools yet, but we're working on it. We're working to make it easier and more accessible for everybody in the world to be able to access this kind of free, permissionless finance.
Very nice, John. Well, as we start to finish off, we're almost done, but it's time to zoom out. Time to get a little bit weird. What do you see as the long-term future for the human race? Do you see dystopia or utopia?
I think, like all of human history, it's going to be a mix of both. But generally speaking, I'm pretty optimistic. I think the long arc of history bends towards justice and freedom and prosperity. Because humans, if we're anything, we are problem-solving machines, and so as time goes on, and we have the help of like actual machines, like computers, for solving problems, I think our problem-solving capabilities are going to continue to improve, and we'll be able to solve a lot of kind of fundamental problems and eventually, move up to just basically, I believe in like a future where people are going to have lots of leisure time not have to work very much, while still having an amazing quality of life that's better than even anything that most people on Earth experience today. So personally, I'm very optimistic. I see a lot of potential for technology and kind of social organization and cooperation to solve a lot of kind of really fundamental problems that people are dealing with, and creating a world of prosperity and abundance. And it's just a matter of, I think, inspiring people and liberating people to work together to achieve that future.
Very nice. Again, John, and I suppose that brings us nicely to the final question, which is, what is your favorite sci-fi, a science fiction book, a film, show, or universe?
That's a good question. I'm not like super big into that genre, but if I had to think about a favorite, it's hard to say. So many of those kinds of universes are like more, seem more dystopian, if you will.
Yes.
At least the ones that I've encountered, it's always like, some like mega corporation or like mega government has like taken over, and they're like a bunch of rebels that are trying to like overcome that and free themselves. Like that's kind of the Star Wars story. In Star Trek world, it's very interesting because they also have like a mega government, but like the mega government are the good guys, and trying to preserve peace all over the universe. And they, like, things have advanced so far for them, they don't even have money. So that's I think a very interesting world. I don't know if that's the world I would want to live in, but yeah, it's an interesting world. Because like I said, I'm not a huge fan of that genre.
That's right, John.
But,
We'll go with a combination of Star Trek and Star Wars. No problem there. Hey, it's been fun talking to you. Thank you for coming on the show. I guess nothing else left to say really, except to hand the microphone back to you. Please tell the people where they can find you if you're on Twitter or somewhere like that, and where they should go if they want to learn more about Sovryn and the ecosystem you're building on Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure. So I have a personal website at lightco.in. That's lightco.in, where people can learn more about me and the various projects I'm working on. I write about Bitcoin and other kind of peer-to-peer technology and related topics on my blog there. I'm also on Twitter at Litecoin, LIGHTCOIN, and people can learn more about Sovryn at the Sovryn website, sovryn.app. That's SOVRYN.app, sovryn.app, and the actual like Sovryn trading interface where people can trade and borrow and lend and all of the other things that you might want to do with the Sovryn protocol is at live.sovryn.app.
Awesome. Hey, pleasure talking to you, John. Thanks very much, and bye for now.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on, Andy.
All right, there you go. That was John at Sovryn. I like John. John's a smart guy, a proper Bitcoiner, which is always good to talk to Bitcoiners. And yeah, I mean, just be interesting to see how Sovryn plays out. And, as I mentioned, I think Jack Dorsey working on something similar. And, so once this stuff gets traction on Bitcoin, it's obviously good for Bitcoin, good for crypto. all we really ask for, right? All right, let's finish this off. Please do subscribe to the Crypto Conversation in whatever podcast app you are using. Please do feel free to give us a nice rating in Apple iTunes or the podcast app. That's always good. But yeah, thanks very much for listening, team. This was the Crypto Conversation for Brave a New Coin. See ya.